Building occupancy. Group A. Introduction. Simply put, building occupancy refers to categorizing buildings based on its usage capacity and is mainly used for building and fire code rules. But it is so much more than just that. Building occupancy statistics can help facility managers make decisions about their employees and building functions in general, which allows a business to run smoother and more efficiently. There are a few ways that proper building occupancy planning can positively impact facility management. One potential impact of proper building occupancy planning would be increased productivity. In today's work environment, collaborative spaces that help encourage teamwork and bonding. By analyzing occupancy stats, the facility manager can gain a better understanding of what is needed in a given space, therefore allowing them to plan the layout accordingly. When taking employee work trends into planning consideration, employee productivity is certain to rise, given that the space is specifically planned for their well-being and comfort. Therefore, one way that proper building occupancy planning impacts facility management decisions is by enabling the managers to increase productivity. Another potential proper building occupancy planning would be operational and maintenance cost savings. Analyzing building occupancy allows facility managers a good look into how a building is used and how workers operate within the space, which is necessary for understanding and planning the space. This way, exact resource allocation and planning can save costs. For example, instead of assuming a number of desks that could fit in a space, proper building occupancy planning can give an exact number of the desks that would be needed and used, hence potentially saving costs in the operation budget. The same cost savings can be said for energy use purposes. Knowing the exact building occupancy in a given room at a given time can help reduce energy costs. For example, knowing that no employee would be using the meeting room outside of certain hours of the day can inform facility managers to keep the lights or the AC off when they're not in use, saving a decent amount of energy costs for the building. Therefore, one way that proper building occupancy planning impacts facility management decisions is by enabling the managers to save money on operational and maintenance costs. The last potential impact of proper building occupancy planning would be employee well-being. Knowing when certain work areas will be more or less busy can help an employee determine when to use certain services, such as, if building occupancy data tells them that the break room is most often used around noon, then perhaps that employee could take their break slightly before or after the rush time, making them happier with their time allocation. Therefore, one way that proper building occupancy planning impacts facility management decisions is by enabling employees to feel control over their space and time, overall improving their happiness at work. Of course, there are other ways that building occupancy data can help facility management make decisions, but these are a few of the more prevalent.
In this slide, I will be discussing the most common aspects in a facility that will be impacted by occupants. The first being the state of the building. The building itself is very important with its impact on the occupants. According to Exploring a Sustainable Building's Impact on Occupant Mental Health and Cognitive Function in a Virtual Environment, Americans spend 87% of their time inside of buildings. Because of this, the building itself has a serious impact on not only the health of the average person, being mental or physical, but can also have a negative or positive impact on the productivity of the people in the buildings. If an occupant works in an environment that is a bad workspace, then they will not want to be there, causing them to go into work just to do what they have to do and leave, thus affecting their performance. The second being the energy use / consumption of the building and its location. The use of energy is also another factor that impacts the occupants of said facilities. Location is a very important factor when it comes to the energy use of a facility. Depending on the location of the facility will determine the amount of energy being consumed by said facility. According to how occupancy affects building energy use, there's a direct correlation between energy consumption and occupancy. When there are people in a building, the rooms of the facility will have the temperatures well regulated. Also, the daily activities done in the facility will, more often than not, require some energy use. Because of this, the ability for a facility to consume clean energy becomes more important to limit its effects on the environment. We learned in previous modules that there is a movement to build more self-sustained buildings, but they all come with their pros and cons. While a con may be how costly building a more sustainable building could be, a pro is that there are more savings on energy costs in the long run.
Overall, when considering the management of a facility, the same general rules apply. You need to have access to the facility. It needs to be designed for its intended use and should function well within the space provided. These are important aspects for every facility, but depending on the facility type, these aspects can differ. Typically, a commercial building will need to be centrally located. Prioritizing access is very important for these buildings as they are designed to attract consumers or produce a service. To be the most accessible, these buildings are often located near city centers. The buildings are going to have a decent sized footprint, but will often focus on vertical expansion. The buildings tend to have strict code compliance with permitting and inspections required for the building and all of its operational components. The mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems will be centralized for the entire facility. An industrial building, however, will need to be located near logistical access points. This includes airports or seaports if the company requires or ships a lot from overseas. The footprint of these buildings is very large. Often it will be 1 or 2-story building. The first story will be very tall to house large operating equipment. The footprint is more horizontal than vertical. The buildings also tend to have larger MEP systems to help regulate the entire footprint and all of the operating components within. Very strict permitting, code, and inspection requirements are used for industrial buildings and needs to be considered when designing these buildings. Residential buildings are the most relaxed when it comes to building code, permits, and inspections. These buildings are better in more secluded locations, although they can be seen in mixed-use developments with commercial buildings in a downtown environment. Like the commercial buildings, they also have central MEP systems, but on a significantly smaller scale. These buildings are usually timber framed with a much smaller footprint. Building occupancy will affect a facility manager in many ways. Being adaptable and understanding the type of facility needed will benefit the facility manager for the entire life cycle of the building, allowing you to make the right decisions for your occupants. Please utilize these references as we have to further your knowledge on building occupancy. Thank you.